Very good morning, Sakina. Thanks very much. Yes, well, of course, as you say, yesterday she was visiting a wildlife conservation game park in Pretoria, in the area of Pretoria. This seems to be largely where she's going to be initially in her trip. Today, she's meeting with her counterpart here in South Africa at the National Treasury, where we are. There's already a full media contingent here waiting for them to speak to us at exactly 8 o'clock. And of course, it's a very significant meeting. I mean, basically, she's a big player in the U.S. government. The first really serious strategic meetings taking place with the U.S. government took place last year when the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, who's sort of the counterpart of Naledi Pandor, if you like, International Minister, came to South Africa in August to basically begin to reassert relations with the countries, because there had been a hiatus in discussions for about 7 years, and that was partly, of course, because of the previous administration, that is the Donald Trump administration, which had sort of forgotten about the African continent. And so in terms of what we can expect today, we do have that meeting between National Treasury Head Enoch Godongwana, the Finance Minister, and Janet Yellen, the U.S. Treasury Secretary. A bit later, she's going to be meeting with businesses, and then later on, she'll then be meeting with the Reserve Bank Governor, Siziba, who is the steward of our monetary policy here in South Africa. So it's going to be lots of conversations, lots of discussions being had. We know, of course, the backdrop to their meetings has been the high inflation situation in the globe. Of course, South Africa has not been unaffected. We've also been experiencing the same. There's been a general approach by central banks, including our very own Reserve Bank, to deal with higher inflation by the use of higher interest rates. There's a feeling that in the other parts of the world, we are seeing that inflation is beginning to come down. There seems to be a trend developing here in South Africa as well, and there's some optimism that we're going to see a situation where reserve banks, central banks around the world, are going to take the foot off the pedal a little bit when it comes to raising interest rates. So that's the backdrop. But of course, as the South African government and the US government, they're going to be talking about broad themes around climate change and adaptation. That's going to be quite a significant issue because, of course, it is an existential issue. We all need to be able to combat climate change so that we can survive for another few generations going forward. Tomorrow is going to be significant in the sense that the US Treasurer is going to be heading to Nompumelelo. That's where she's going to be seeing some communities in the coal belt there. And of course, the US is one of the funders of that Just Energy Transition Partnership Investment Plan. That's to the tune of 8.5 billion rand, 8.5 billion US dollars. And that is funded not only by the United States, but by some European countries as well as the United Kingdom. Not only are they going to be bringing financial clout, but also other experiential clout to ensure that the just energy transition, not only in South Africa, but in other African countries across the continent, takes place smoothly. One of the big issues, I suppose, that will be discussed is developing countries have been saying, and they were saying this at COP27, we can't have a situation where we are not really the perpetrators of climate change, but we are the most affected. About 17 out of 20 countries that are most vulnerable to climate change are actually African countries. And at the same time, you expect us to borrow money in order to deal with climate change mitigation, adaptation, and so on and so forth. So there's going to be a big push, no doubt, from the South African side that the US furnishes South Africa more with grants than with loans. So that's sort of the background, but of course a whole lot of other discussions being had.